Welcome back. Welcome back to the live stream, y'all. Um, I'm Brian. This is the Blurting While Dad live stream. Um, as you can see, I do have a community that will teach you guys how to market yourself or your business. If you're interested, go ahead and click the link. I do not know how to take this link off of there. It posts every single time I drop a show. So we just gonna rock with it. Um, Tonight's episode is going to be a little bit all over the place. I did lean hard into nerd stuff last week, and I will be pivoting back into that. I'm going to sit down and force myself to crack the spine and reread. I think it's which one is it? The Wastelands. I'm trying to remember what the second Dark Tower book is. And so I'll be walking you through that. The reason why I'm skipping the first Dark Tower book is it kind of set up the story, but I mean, I don't feel like I don't feel like it's super necessarily important to understand the entire crux of it. Um, just because I don't know. I just don't feel like it's really necessary. And I'm going in the order that they were kind of released. And so I know the Little Sisters of Illyria came out, is considered the first one in the reading order, if I'm not mistaken. But the very first Dark Tower book was the Gunslinger that I read. And um, yeah, the Gunslinger, I don't know if I want to start with that one. I think I want to skip over that one. I'll make the decision. I also think my daughter has it, so I need to go find it in her room. So anyway, I'm going to get back to the nerd stuff. I do have a lot of stuff to discuss. The new Spider-Man trailer dropped. I'm excited about it. It looks like it's going to be a takeoff on the other, where he's changing into something different. We're probably going to get Morlon as an overarching big bad at some point in time, and the Inheritors and stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. Um, you know, I don't know if they're going to get too far into the spider totem and all that other stuff. The other was really kind of out there as a book. Um, and like I said, there was a time and place where I disconnected a little bit more from Spider-Man. And the other was kind of when I had disconnected a bit from the character. And so I had to come back and reread it. And it's still been years since I reread the other. But I do think that that's what they're going to be leaning into moving forward for the Spider-Man movies. It looks like the villain that we see is going to be Scorpion. And typically, I know in the Spider-Man movies, there's a villain we see in the trailers and one we don't see. And so I'm kind of interested to see in the villain that we don't see, especially if they go with the other. I do think we're going to get more Morlon, and we'll see what happens with that, because he's one of those weird, ambiguous. I may do a character issues about Morlon because he's one of those kind of ambiguously powered characters where he's as strong and as invincible as he needs to be, depending on what the plot calls for, however big of a threat he needs to be. I know when they did the Spider-Man, Death of the Spider-Verse and stuff, the Inheritors and the way they set it up, these guys are like, they can pretty much destroy anybody. Like what the head guy from the Inheritors, what snatched up Cosmic Spider-Man and drained him of his powers, like, just kind of manhandled him. Spider-Man with the Captain Universe powers, it was wild. But anyway, I'm interested. The trailer was dope. I'll be talking about that next week. I did finish Wonder Man. Wonder Man was it was a breath of fresh air. It was something outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it was still inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was just a different kind of show, and it didn't rely on the heroes as much. It was more dialogue and character, and it was really kind of a meta commentary on the filmmaking process. I really enjoyed Wonder Man, and I know that they're doing a second season, so I'm excited about that. Watched the first episode of Steel Ball Run last night. I don't know when the second one's coming back on, when the second one's going to be dropping. It looks like they're not doing a weekly cadence for this JoJo. It's kind of what screwed up. What was it? Stone Ocean, when they dropped it. Because up until that point, you could normally catch the JoJo's weekly, and Netflix decided not to do that, and that kind of sucks. So we'll see when the next one drops. But I was really, really super impressed with Steel Ball Run and how straightforward it was. And I know JoJo's Bizarre Adventure relies on a lot of, your mind really has to be open to travel a lot of different places. I like the fact that they really edited this and created this show to actually bring viewers in so they know what's happening and kind of set the parameters of that of the Still Ball Run universe. So I don't have problems with it. I do have kind of side eyeing the black character on there. Um, I know he's the main dude. Like he is kind of a constant through the whole story. The yo yo yo, I don't quite know how I feel about it. Um, but otherwise, I did enjoy Steel Ball Run. I'm excited to see when they actually drop the series because this was kind of like a movie that that told the backstory and then kind of walked them through and got them to racing. And so right now they're racing. If you haven't checked it out, I'm not going to go into many spoilers about it, but Steel Ball Run's worth your time. I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to. I'm curious to see what the ending music's going to be because they didn't really play the theme. They didn't play the entire theme. We didn't get the ending music, so I'm interested to see what they did. So that's the nerd content for the week. Here's the thing. So this show is about transparency, and um, I've always tried to be, share my journey as a nerd, black father who has ADHD, who's a business owner, and any other label you can affix to me. Um, I'm kind of going through that. I'm in a difficult headspace kind of day right now. Um, my rejection, and for those that don't know, one of the things you get with ADHD possibly is really super sensitive to rejection by people that um, by people that you've invested time into. Um, and it's super sensitive, it's hypersensitive, um, and it lashes out and it can tank an entire day. And so I'm kind of wrestling with that because I got some feedback that I needed to hear earlier today about, you know, basically, work-life balance and things along those lines. And it's trying not to I'm taking the good part of it and really focusing in on what I want to do. But again, I don't expect people to treat me with kid gloves when it comes to stuff, especially people that I care about. I don't really expect them to do that. But it is a component of the way that I process information interpersonally. You have to be really careful about not taking a perceived slight or rejection too personally because it can tank my entire day. And I had a pretty productive day. Okay. Not really in a bad place, but I'm not in the best place either right now. And one of the things, like I said, when you have ADHD, a lot of people, and I don't think it's in the DSM criteria or anything, but rejection sensitive dysphoria. And that means as an ADHDer, when I perceive that I'm an idea or myself, a part of me is being rejected by somebody, it's almost chaotic. Like my brain goes into fight or flight mode. It's really uncomfortable. Um, I kind of spiral a little bit. I start really beating up on myself, and more times than not, a good enough rejection is enough to shut down my day. And it's hard when you're a business owner. You have to go out there and get the bag and talk to people. And when somebody says it's not for them, um, tempering that with the fact that it's not a rejection of me. It's saying, hey, this service ain't aligned with what I want. Okay. But small things feel a lot bigger than they really are. And sometimes even constructive criticism, um, and it doesn't matter how you couch it, it's on me, right? Um, it can feel like a kind of a dagger. And so, small things feel bigger than they are. Brain kind of fills in gaps, and it feels real even when it's not, even when it's complete and utter bullshit. Getting feedback for existing or something that I don't have any control over. It really feels like a dagger in the heart. It actually hurts, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I heard something I needed to hear, but um, I know what it is. And it's one thing. Here's the thing that you have as a neurodivergent person. You know what you're supposed to be doing. You know how you're supposed to be perceiving things. You know how you're supposed to be feeling things. Um, but then your brain has other ideas about how you're going to experience this thing. Um, just like with my ADHD, I know that this task needs to be done. I know how to get it done. I know what framework I need to have success in completing the task. Starting the task, Nah. And that's kind of what it is. And so that's the challenge. And so it's having a brain that actively works against you at times. Um, and you know that it's working against you. I'm fully aware. Hey, you're not being rejected. You just got, it was just something that you heard. It's some feedback. All right, cool. But my brain doesn't track it like that. And so I have these two competing parts of my brain that are fighting for attention. Um, One, when I experience a level of rejection or pushback or feedback, it's completely shut down and crash out, and I'm a failure and I hate myself and I did all this other. And the other side is, okay, I can take this and get better. And I have those two things competing in my brain all the time. Okay. And so it feels real and it feels weighty when it's really not. And then my experience as uh, a black kid in the 90s. Now, you guys got to understand that I came of age in the 90s. And um, growing up in the 90s, ADHD was a white person thing. White kids were allowed to have ADHD. I need that to land with y'all. When I was coming up, when I was growing up, people knew that the diagnosis existed and people got treatment for it. Um, my mom was a school nurse. We had a kid in there who came in and get his Ritalin every day, right? Little white kid. And he was successful in school, and that was the thing that kept him regulated. When I was coming up, ADHD was a white kid thing. Um, if you were black and you had ADHD, you were just lazy or you were just a bad kid. And that's the label that I got affixed to me was he could do the work. He's just lazy. He just doesn't put forth the effort. And rightfully so. Like I was smart enough where I didn't have to pay attention in most of my classes up until about 11th grade. And I could get A's or B's in the classes without putting forth the effort required. I didn't really have to work hard for my grades up until midway through high school. But the reason why, because one of the things I found out after I got diagnosed as an adult with ADHD, because my life was kind of spiraling. I was in an impossible case management job with impossible workloads. The young lady, one of my office mates, she actually um, had a mental health crisis because the job was so bad at her cubicle. It was terrifying, um, and stuff like that. And so I experienced that in real time. And at the time, I didn't know it was an impossible job until I got a chance to step out of the job and go do something else. But I'm like, I'm going to get fired if I don't figure out something. And I saw a special when I was at home on Sunday, kind of dreading going in on Monday. And it was called "Is It You, Me, or the ADHD?" And it came on PBS. And I sat down and watched that thing from beginning to end. And then I watched the repeat of it. And I watched the repeat of it. And it was watching somebody narrate my life as an adult with ADHD. And so I start the process of quietly going to get my ADHD diagnosis. I don't tell anybody because when you're an adult and you're seeking a diagnosis, people think you're looking for an excuse or a crutch. Was looking for neither. I just wanted help. Um, I go to the doctor, and the first doctor I hooked up with was a resident. And so I go through the entire battery of diagnosis and assessments or whatnot. And it was pretty clear, obvious that, I had the ADHD diagnosis. And so she had her, she was going to, recommend, like I think a non-stimulant like Strattera or something to start out with. And then she goes to her attending and shares her notes. And the attending, he read blackmail and blah blah blah, and they decided I was drug seeking, and they put me on tranquilizers. And I didn't know that they were tranquilizers until I talked to my mom, who's a nurse. She's like, "Why'd they put you on tranquilizers?" I have no idea. And I'm sitting there like I'm in court. I had a family that I've been working trying to get them extracted from the court system, and so we had our last hearing to try to. This was kind of the permanency hearing to get them established and close the case out, finalize everything. I go in there and my brain will not work. My brain and my mouth will not connect with one another. It's because I was on those tranquilizers. And so um, I go back to I kind of contact the resident doctor that I was working with. She was resident psych doctor. And I kind of said, hey, I came and asked you guys for help and you guys put me on these tranquilizers. And it was like this roundabout way of basically saying that the attending thought I was drug seeking and, decided to not help me. And so I ended up leaving. And this time is when I had kind of brought my mom into the loop and she informed me like, oh yeah, you didn't know you had ADHD. We've known that you had ADHD. That was something I've known since you were little. It'd been nice to know before I was 30. Cause I spent, the last part of my high school years and my college years thinking I was a failure. And I was crazy. Like I thought I was crazy. But anyway, she's like, yeah, we've been known that you had ADHD. I thought you knew. Well, I didn't. And so I go and find work with an actual practitioner who specialized in adult ADHD and got the treatment I needed. So, um, but I go back to the fact that when I was growing up in the 90s, Black kids didn't have ADHD. You weren't allowed to have ADHD. You were just bad. Like you were just bad or you were just lazy and you fell into either one of those buckets. And I fell into the distracted and lazy bucket. Um, Even though I got my homework done and I had pretty good grades. And so it was interesting to actually go get the diagnosis as an adult. Um, and to see how people treat you. Like, yeah. And I had to tell my boss, like, yeah, I'm getting treatment for ADHD and they're starting me out on meds. And so just letting you guys know that that's what's happening in my world. And they're like, okay, well, just don't use that as an excuse. Yeah, that kind of shit. Right, 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 right. Anyway, and that was kind of my life up until that point. Um, and so for a long time, I kept my ADHD diagnosis just kind of between me and my wife and my mom, and because that you're treating it as an excuse. You're looking for a handout. You don't have control over yourself. You're just trying to find a reason to outsource your control and stuff like that. That was a real thing, and that's what I dealt with for a long time with that. And so I kind of kept it tucked. And it was that same shame and guilt that you have. And I know why my mom didn't go out and once she got my ADHD diagnosis, why she didn't necessarily share that with the school or anybody else. Because again, 90s, late 80s, early 90s, if you're a Black kid who got diagnosed with any kind of behavioral thing, specifically ADHD, you instantly got in the almost school system, you got tracked. It didn't happen to white kids much, but some of them did. But you would get tracked and dropped into remedial classes, and that wasn't my path. If I went to remedial class, I wouldn't have been able to go to college the way that the school system was set up. And so I know why my mom didn't really communicate that to the school, but I wish she would have communicated it to me that I had already been diagnosed with ADHD. So I didn't go through my teenage years and adult years thinking that I was a failure and a loser and crazy and losing my mind. And so now this is where I'm at. Um, with the psych nurse on the meds, I'm expecting miracles from these medications. Um, and so I'm ramping up the dosage because they're not giving the my work is stacking up and it's getting harder and harder to navigate. And I need more and more medication to the point where I was over medicated for ADHD, with stimulants specifically. And I lost who my personality was. I became a robot. It zombied me out, and almost destroyed my relationship. Like it was bad. And so I ended up dropping all the medicines and going back to who I was. And the rebound was so crazy that it put my job in jeopardy. So it was kind of this up and down kind of thing, this seesaw of things. Because one of the things is when you have ADHD, a doctor, and I think one of the difficulties was I switched providers. I was forced to switch providers from the nurse that specialized in adult ADHD to just another psych nurse who didn't necessarily have a history with me. And they weren't able to really monitor my medications the way that the psych nurse had. And a lot of it did go on my accountability because I'm like, I require this ADHD medication to keep my job. and I was not amenable to looking at my dose or changing things or whatnot. I'm like, nope, we got this. I'm locked in. Let's go. And so I came off the meds, rebounded pretty hard. Around that time, I ended up getting promoted to a different job that was outside of what I had been doing. So it was a little life was a little bit easier. But I'd kind of gone through this seesaw. And the type ADHD I had was called the inattentive subtype, primarily inattentive. And one of the things I found is, because I got curious, I sat down and I did the autism diagnosis, the self-diagnosis thing. I did multiple ones of that, and all I will say is the self-diagnosis basically said you need to go see a professional right now. And so that's kind of the journey I'm on right now, to see if there's if this is something, if my ADHD is kind of cross pollinated with my autism. Because I'll give you a hit. I'll explain it to you like this. My brain loves patterns. It craves structure. It likes to know what we're doing next, to the point that if a routine gets upset, I don't participate. Like, I have to go to the gym after I drop my kids off at school. Otherwise, I will not go. And if I try to go at any other point during the day, it feels like it's chaotic and I don't get a good workout in and I can't focus and I'm freaking out because I feel like I'm leaving other things on the table to do. So, on one hand, I love to know what's coming next. I love a ordered kind of routine. On the other hand, my brain craves novelty. So my brain loves routine and craves novelty. And you would think that those are two separate parts of it. It's the same brain. And so what'll happen is I'll set a routine and I'll feel comfortable in that routine. And as soon as my brain says, nope, let's not do this anymore, it's off that routine and on to something else. Good example. I got a client for a service that basically I come in and build out a content studio for people, and I kind of consult with them and teach them how to use the equipment and everything. And if they want a studio in their office or they want a studio in their business, I give you equipment list, figure out the assembly piece, and they come in and train you or your staff on how to use it. Okay. I got a client doing that. I did my first install this week and I had a great time doing the install. It went really, really well. Um, it wasn't as daunting as I thought it was going to be. Instantly, my brain wants to go do something else. Find another, how could, can you send me money? I don't want to buy an iPhone. Okay. Can you send me money? I want to buy an iPhone. All right, yo. Anyway, so I'm wrestling with the ADHD side of me and the possibly autistic side of me, and these two things ain't jiving. And I need to probably, even talking to my wife today, she's like, "You need to go get that shit diagnosed." So at least you know what you're working with. But it's weird because there are things that are totally ADHD and then parts of my brain that rail against the ADHD part. Like I said, the craving novelty thing, I like novelty as long as it's predictable novelty, which doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't make the slightest bit of sense, right? Like, I want novelty, but it needs to be a predictable sort of novelty. Um, I like my stuff being where it is, and so I do have a messy streak, but if anybody moves the stuff and it goes somewhere where I don't know, I freak out. So there are two dueling things of it. And so that's why I'm like, okay, probably going to go sit down and talk to the doctor when I go tomorrow and say, let's see about this autism diagnosis. I don't know if it's going to make a difference for me as an adult, but it'll be something nice to know. Right. But like I said, I came up in a time where Black males were not allowed to be neurodivergent. If you were neurodivergent, you were in the remedial classes, and they didn't let you interact with the other kids. You weren't allowed to experience that. And it was even worse for Black girls that were coming up because we're still struggling with the concept that Black girls do have ADHD and autism and stuff. They don't get diagnosed. But in the 90s, little Black kids just weren't allowed to have it. If you did, you got stuck in the remedial classes. They'll almost treat it like a punishment. Okay. Um, and so with the autism question, it's not do I have it? It's what does it mean if I do? What does that mean if because I've already done the self-assessment thing that you're supposed to do. And the self-assessment basically said, go see a doctor yesterday. um, it's not going to fundamentally change who I am or anything, but I think it will change my understanding of who I am. Explain a lot of different things in my childhood where growing up, where I felt this weird level of disconnectedness between myself and other kids, where I'm almost experiencing my emotions from a third hand perspective and stuff. And I had to fake a lot of emotions just to feel like I was being normal with other kids. It was a weird thing. And then also goes into the fact that I did not speak until I was almost 3 years old. I didn't speak till I was almost 3 years old. And then when I did start speaking, I instantly started speaking in full sentences. But in the 80s, they thought I was mute. And they were kind of preparing my mom for a life of dealing with a kid that was handicapped in that way. Like I said, this is all 80s speak, y'all. So don't come for me with this one. But they were kind of preparing my mom for a life with a kid that had something wrong up here because I would not talk. I didn't hit my speaking milestones the way they expected me to. And one day she said I just started talking in full sentences and never stopped. And not just full sentences for a 3-year-old, like full sentences that were good for a 5 or 6-year-old, where I was clear and sentences were perfectly ordered, not bad grammar or anything. And so and I was like a prodigious reader and stuff like that. I still am, even though I don't flex that muscle as much. But there are other aspects of things that go along with autism. I hyper focus on comic books and science and things that don't move the needle for me. Like I can tell you all kinds of useless trivia off the top of my head about stuff. It doesn't necessarily benefit me in life, but I can tell you all that stuff. And it's just a hyperfixation with that stuff. So there are lots of signposts where I'm like, I probably need to go diagnose. I'm not necessarily feeling bro who's in office right now as head of HHS, specifically talking about rounding up the autistic people and putting them in work camps. Don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. And so the idea that we need a registry of autism and stuff that he wants to, I don't like the idea of that either. And so it's kind of the balance. So I'm going in to see my doctor tomorrow. We're going to talk about it. Okay. But like I said, today was kind of one of those days where your brain is kind of in misalignment with how you should be feeling. I should be feeling accomplished because I'm wrapping up a big project that I just completed and it was super successful. And I'm on to the next phase, and my brain will not let me celebrate that. That's it. So that was an addendum, an addition onto my script. So let me jump back a little bit. We're gonna pivot. And this is kind of words mean thing. This is speaking from the heart versus saying it right. Okay. And it kind of ties into what we're talking about. But the reason why I came up with this is I was watching the Fallout. This little brother, was it LaRussell, the rapper, right? Right. I saw him on social media, and I forgot what the song was. It was like it was supposed to be kind of a freestyle, written freestyle or whatnot. Something had written that he was doing off the top, performing in front of people, and it was called Heaven Sent. And Lil Dude prefaced it by saying, my engineer says that I shouldn't perform this, and I shouldn't show this song. And instantly, I'm like, man, your engineer might have known something. And then bro does the Heaven Sent song. And in that, he's talking about, even Trump is heaven sent, and even Jeffrey Epstein is heaven sent. And then at the end, it's like, even you are heaven sent, like you worse than all of them. And Twitter did the Twitter thing and, kind of drug him. But then Threads even jumped in on it. And so this dude's getting drug all over social media, ends up first he tries to double down on it and says, you guys don't understand the depth and the layers of what I was talking about with the heaven sent thing, right? I'm not even going to play it because I don't want the copyright strike, right? But he's like, you guys don't even know what I'm talking about. We'll do this, that, and the third. And he tried to double down on it. Eventually got so bad he shut down his social media thing. Here's what it is. And I feel what bro was working with. I feel what he was working on, right? His engineer told him not to put it out, and he did it anyway. Okay. Sometimes when you are so in love with your own thinking, you think that you are the sole arbiter of the best thing to say for you at that moment in time. And it happens with creative people all the time, right? Because creative people fight against their vision versus what the reality is all the time. And so sometimes they're able to tune out that part that says, this is what your reality is. You need to go with what your vision is. And I think that's kind of what he did. I think that he thought that that song was going to touch somebody or reach somebody on a deeper level than it actually did. But you up here talking about Jeffrey Epstein as heaven sent, bro. That is a non-starter right now. And you could have kept that one tucked. You did not need to come out and say that, bro. Like, you should have held on to that one. And so having a filter and choosing to ignore it are two different things. Sometimes it's good to have a filter. Sometimes it's good to say, if I say this in this venue in front of these people, how is this going to go? Other times it's cool not to give a shit. Like, it's cool to not give a shit, but you need to have the level of discernment to know, is this going to harm me or my career? Because I saw a dude sizzle a bunch of his goodwill instantly because he kept doubling down on it instead of saying, yeah, it didn't come out the way I thought it did. I probably shouldn't have dropped that. He's like, no, man, y'all don't understand. You know, and he was fighting for his life in the on X or Twitter or whatever it's called. He's fighting, bro was fighting for his life over the stupidest thing that he has done in his career. Okay. Emotional honesty is not the same thing as communicating clearly. Okay. And you could feel something deeply and it still comes out wrong. Like, I know what he was saying. You know, in his religion or practice of the religion, you know, God needed to put those things in place to exist or whatever reason. For me, I look at it the way it's like, God didn't need to have we didn't need a Jeffrey Epstein on this planet, bro. Like, that was saying he was heaven sent is crazy. I know where he was going with it, but at the same time, you could have left that one alone, bro. You could feel something really deeply and still say it wrong. And words like heaven sent carry weight, whether you meant them that way or not. They have a special meaning to some people, and you have to be aware of how people are interpreting your message. Okay, it's not always a lot of times we want to believe your ears, you're just listening wrong. Sometimes it's how you phrase the message, and sometimes the message is not the right time or venue or place, or you don't have the words to articulate that message in a way that isn't going to alarm people. I still go back to it. The words, even Jeffrey Epstein is heaven sent, is crazy. And I know he didn't say it like that. I'm paraphrasing. But he's like, the chorus was heaven sent, and he's like, even Jeffrey Epstein, heaven sent, even Trump, heaven sent. Don't do that. Don't do that. They should have booed him off the stage, like, hey, shut it down. And like I said, bro's engineer was the one that was heaven sent, because bro's engineer told him, don't say that shit on stage. Do not say this. His engineer was heaven sent. He doesn't want to listen. You don't get to interpret how people, you don't get to control how people interpret loaded language, y'all. And I think that's the thing. You can't, like, human language is terribly imprecise, but it's one of the few ways that we have communicating with each other. Even sign language is not as precise as being able to transmit my thoughts directly into your brain. Okay. What happens when you're talking to somebody, your thoughts are formed up here. Okay. They have to filter through the different parts of your brain, go down to your speech center, then you translate those thoughts into words. Most times not, those words do not convey your totality of thought. It's enough to give somebody an idea of what you're thinking. So those words come out and they have to go through somebody else's ears, filter through their brain, and filter through their interpretation mechanism. And a lot of stuff will get lost in translation. And so you will say things that you did not intend to say. Okay. And I think that's one of the issues. Like I said, human language is an imprecise way of communicating our thoughts and feelings, but it's, we have sign language, you have written language. It's one of the only ways that we have. Okay. The engineer provided quality control over bro and said, hey, don't do this. Okay. Don't get up here and talk about even Jeffrey Epstein is heaven sent. That is crazy to say in front of people. I don't care if it's a hit song. I don't care if you envision it as the song that's going to win the Grammy. You need to leave that one tucked. You got to look in the mirror. You need to say that out loud to yourself and say, wait a minute, did I actually mean that? So, like I said, the engineer was heaven sent because the engineer tried to save him from that. Every good creator has somebody who helps them kind of tighten things up, like an editor. Like most writers have an editor. And sometimes your editor isn't somebody you hire. Your editor is somebody that you have a rapport with who can tell you, hey, man, don't do that. Don't say that. Okay. When I first started this, long time ago, when I started the Long Boxing While Black podcast, there are times where I was talking freely, but I wasn't saying exactly what I meant, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't find the words for what I actually meant. And going back and listening to some of those old episodes, it was enough to get me stop recording for a while because I would go off on these tangents and things would come out that I didn't necessarily mean in that way. I just didn't have the words to phrase it. And listening back and realizing my message didn't match my thoughts is kind of a humbling experience. I wish more people did that level of self-reflection. There's a benefit in recording yourself because you get a chance to hear how other people hear you. Right? Unfiltered doesn't mean authentic, y'all. Sometimes it just means an unfinished, incomplete thought. So if I'm giving you my unfiltered thoughts, sometimes it also means my incomplete thoughts, my unfinished thoughts. Okay. Just something to chew on, y'all. Here's another thing that I've seen, because it ties into the Russell thing. This idea that you're going to hold somebody accountable on the internet, like a stranger is going to hold another stranger accountable over social media. I don't know where this idea came from. It seems stupid to me. I don't know where it comes from. But I think it comes as a pretense just to dogpile people a lot of times on social media. And we call it accountability, but it's really not. You can't hold a stranger accountable any more than you can hold a killer whale accountable. Accountability is an internal thing. Taking accountability is an internal decision. You're going to take accountability for this thing. You can't enforce accountability on somebody. You can enforce consequences sometimes. You can say, because of X, you no longer get access to me or my ears, and I'm no longer within your audience. That's a consequence. You're not holding anybody accountable until they decide that they're going to take accountability. Okay. And so I think a lot of times we get caught up in the feeling of wanting to say something pithy or nasty to somebody on the internet for some kind of transgression or something they did, and we're considering that accountability, and it's really not. It's just you saying something rude to somebody. It's fake accountability. Okay. Accountability without real consequences is just commentary. And accountability means something changes, access, opportunity, relationship. When somebody says something online and y'all dogpile them or drag them, it's entertainment for you. It's entertainment for whoever else is watching that thread, but they're not feeling accountability. Some people just shit post online in the hopes that somebody will drag them so they can get those engagement dollars. They're not being accountable. They're not being held accountable. They're actually profiting off of it. And they're actually being incentivized to do it again because people are responding to it. Okay. People think insults and dogpiling equal accountability. It really doesn't. It's just a reaction. You're just reacting to something that somebody said online. And I was actually in a Facebook group like that where people would sit around and wait for somebody in the group to say something that they didn't like, or something they felt was off color, or um, wasn't proper in the context of what the group was about, or non-inclusive language. They would sit and wait for somebody to screw up so they can drag them. They would sit around and wait, and they would artificially create situations where they would grossly interpret somebody's words or actions, and bend the meaning and be willfully obtuse about it, just so they could participate in the tradition of dragging them and posting memes and making fun of them. It was the most toxic thing I'd ever seen. And this is a group that was really supposed to be about inclusivity and stuff. And the inclusivity turned into, we are going, you say the wrong thing. I've seen people get drugged for typing the wrong word, autocorrect. Somebody said the wrong thing, or they don't agree with one aspect of something somebody said, but they agree with the rest of the argument. And they're trying to drag you. They're trying to tag a bunch of people. Oh, we're about to drag him and stuff like that. It devolved into a mess. I did not stick around in that group. It's a comic book group, and we had great conversations about comic books. But um, the eggshells that you had to walk on, because sometimes even the people that were the stars of the group, the people they loved in the group, all you had to do was say one wrong thing, and you had a bunch of people. They're going on your personal page, posting your kids, they tagging your employer. Like, it was wild stuff. And for them, it was like it's like it didn't serve any other purpose but for their own edification, their own excitement. And a lot of people I talked to who were cool, open-minded people were turned off by their experience in that group. I'm not even going to name what the Facebook group is. It's a big community. They were so turned off by that, where they're like, man, that's not what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't everybody's dragging the racist or homophobic or transphobic person. It was, all you said was when you said and you're going to have a bunch of people ready to drag you to the pits of hell and put your kids on the internet and meme you up and all kinds of other stuff. It was crazy work. And it's that hypersensitivity that comes with the internet. Okay. And people are addicted to the drug of dragging people, and they consider that accountability. It's really not. It's just being mean to people on the internet. And for some people, it's a signal. Like, there's something there's a hole in your life where all you have is being mean to people on the internet. And you call it accountability. You try to dress it up as something else, but really it's just you just want to be mean to somebody. You just want to bully somebody on the internet. And I think we need to call some of this stuff what it is. You want to bully somebody on the internet? Fine. Don't pretend like you're being is holding them accountable. It's just, I get to talk mean to this person because they said something I don't like, which is fine. That's normal human discourse, right? But don't dress it up like something it is, right? If nothing changes in that person's real life, then nothing really happened. But if you're posting this person's kids online and trying to call their job and stuff because they said something when they should have said you probably need to be the one that seeks help. Okay. I'm kind of jumping around on my outline here because there was a whole section about the accountability thing. And I'll probably spin the block on that one on a later episode. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because it gives me a dim view of humanity when we start talking about how people act online. So we're going to pivot a little bit more into commentary on nerd stuff. Okay. But it's this very specific thing about nerd culture. So I happen to be on YouTube, and when you follow comic book and movie YouTube, you fall down what I call speculation tube. And speculation tube is the guy that saw the movie trailer and is going to make a 15-minute video about a 90-second movie trailer. And typically when somebody does that, it's not for any good reason. Like, they're not talking about how awesome the movie looks or anything. They're going to make a bunch of speculations about why this movie sucks or how they should improve it and all kinds of other stuff and why everybody's wasting money. I saw earlier somebody did that with Lanterns. Like, dude made a whole video about why Lanterns was bad and it sucked, and everybody's like, wait, did that show come out yet? No, it hasn't dropped yet. How do you know it's bad? How do you even know what it's going to be? But he made an entire video talking about it. Um, seen, like I said, with the Spider-Man trailer, man, people have made entire 15, 20-minute videos about this 30-second trailer. And either the movie is going to be the greatest thing they've ever seen or it's going to be the worst thing they've ever seen. And the reality is they haven't seen it yet. They've seen the same thing that we've seen, which is a 30-second trailer. Okay. Um, so speculation tube is where they take small pieces of info and content and build entire castles of opinions about it. Okay. A lot of times it's incomplete data. They have a very strong tone and it's super leading questions about things. Such and such losing his touch. Is DC becoming too woke now? I mean, what's this? There's too many black people in this trailer, so DC must be becoming too woke. It's crazy. Okay. And the language is this could mean, or this might suggest, right? It sounds uncertain, but it pushes to a conclusion about a thing. Okay. I saw this happen when the Steel Ball Run trailer dropped the first time. People built entire why this is going to be the worst season of JoJo ever. The art style is going to be terrible. This is going to be awful. It's not going to follow the storyline. The voice acting, we didn't even know who the voice actors were at the time. The voice acting is going to be bad. They're going to revise the whole story. Again, it's going to be the artwork. Like there's all kinds of other speculation that came off of this short trailer. The show was in post-production, bro. It hadn't even really dropped yet. They were getting ready to drop it. And people had determined that this was either going to be the best season of JoJo or the worst season of JoJo off of a trailer. Speculation tube is wild. And it's super lucrative because it invariably, whenever they do it, it's going to spike engagement because people are going to be fighting for their lives in the comments to either agree with this person who saw a 30-second trailer and decided that it was, this was the totality of the vision, or people that are saying, this is really stupid. Why are you trying to form an entire opinion? Have you seen the thing yet? Okay. And so when the Steel Ball Run thing was, there's no new info, but people were making all kinds of content off of this trailer. And are we gonna have the same problem that we had with One Punch Man with the art and blah blah blah? And are they gonna cheap out on the art? And is Netflix gonna screw this up? And blah. Nobody knew anything yet. But they were kind of making all these guesses and everything. Speculation tube is out of control, bro. It's very hard to consume comic book stuff and comic book movies and anime and television shows and commentary on that stuff on YouTube because people have built entire channels about hating shit that they've never seen before. You got dudes like the Critical Drinker. I don't fuck with him at all. Who get up there and he will, he has a raging hate boner for all of this stuff. And you can't really, it's not any real reason why. It's just he's got to layer all the Stark on top of it. And he doesn't really necessarily have a reason why he hates it. He just knows he doesn't like it. And then his audience, because they're aligned with him, they decide that they don't like it because he doesn't like it. And then you start getting these weird hate trains about stuff. It is what it is. People want answers early. It's playing on human curiosity when it comes out. When speculation tube starts firing up, it's playing on human curiosity, which is a normal thing. People want answers. Fans want clarity. They want to know what they're getting into before it drops. And so it kind of tickles that piece of their brain, but it leads to some pretty odious things because there should be no reason that you are going on to like a Rotten Tomatoes and review bombing a movie that you've never seen that hasn't even come out yet because somebody online didn't like the trailer. That is crazy. That's insane. Okay. So if you don't have the information, but you speak with confidence, you're performing. You're not providing any sort of cultural analysis or critique. You're just performing for an audience. My audience expects me to hate this thing, and so I'm going to hate it. I've seen it so many times in the video game space. I've seen it a lot in comic book space. People are mad about X-Men, this, that, and the third. And sorry, tweak my shoulder, y'all. People are mad about some aspect of X-Men, and this is the worst thing about X-Men ever. Or some dramatic change in tone or shift, and they're not going to watch it. I've seen it with the Absolute DC universe. People that have not read a single book from the Absolute DC universe, but decided that the whole thing is garbage and trash and they hate it. They haven't even cracked the spine on it. They haven't even looked at what we're talking about, but they pick on one thematic element and say, Batman's 6'8". How could he be 6'8"? This is ridiculous. And they throw the whole story out. And they don't even get a chance. People build personalities around not liking shit on social media, and it happens in the nerd space, and it's tiresome, y'all. You know, I don't expect you to like everything that you consume, every nerd, every comic book or movie or whatever that you consume. Even in hip hop, I don't expect you to like every album that you listen to, but it's okay to say, hey, I'm not a fan of this artist, and because I'm not a fan of this person, I don't really consume their work. Cool. I've consumed their work in the past. I wasn't a fan. Cool. But to say this thing is absolutely abhorrent and terrible, and I've never listened to it before, I don't even know who this person is, or I don't like it because such and such doesn't like it, and because such and such doesn't like it, I don't like it either. That is weirdo shit to me. Just what it is. And like I said, people have cultivated entire personalities around that, where that is their personality. Their job is to not like anything except stuff that had already been made before and people already kind of like it. Yeah. Anyway. So I'm really jumping around my outline, y'all. I'm sorry. I apologize. So that was and like I said, man, the entire I don't like this thing and I'm gonna just hate it because it is popular and it's fun to hate things. I don't know if there's an emptiness in you. And here's the thing, I used to watch content like that. Like I used to be into when I first started watching stuff on YouTube, I really used to be in stuff like the Nostalgia Critic and things along those lines. Until I started detecting this undertone of mean, like this mean, like it was like I know it was a comedy show, but there are parts of it where it was just really mean. There's parts of it that was kind of anti-black. Um, you know, but then you get this real sense of, okay, did you even watch this? Are you just reading what other people thought about this and just regurgitating their hatred of a thing or their dislike of a thing? Or do you hate it because you didn't quite understand it? It didn't quite connect with you? Um, you know, and I understand that his job is to go and watch the movies and make comedy material on it. But I was for a while I was in the nostalgia critic, and then I just as I got it's just kind of like this dude doesn't like anything. And I don't want to watch somebody who doesn't find joy in anything. It seems to be an empty existence where everything comes out and you hate it instinctively and reactively. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of y'all comic book people is like that. And a lot of y'all movie people is like that. You know, um, I read parts of the screenplay of one battle after another, right? And there are parts of them like, ooh, I don't really fuck with that idea. But I'm going to sit down and watch the movie so I can form my own opinion about it. Even though thematically there are parts of the politics of it don't necessarily align with what I think. I do have a problem with, basically you're saying that this character is a stand-in for Angela Davis or Asada Shakur, and she is not only is she not only is um, the person a traitor, they're hypersexualized, they're sleeping with the enemy, but you're saying that they're a stand-in for Asada's cure and stuff like that. Like I wasn't necessarily aligning with aspects of the movie that were presented to the public, but I'm still going to sit down and watch the movie so I can form my own opinion and decide whether I like it or not based on what my opinion is. And not listen to the voices that say, hey, this movie sucks. Okay, cool. Let me watch it and take my own opinion of it. And I think that's something that's missing in our criticism of stuff, where automatically we decide because such and such doesn't like it, because a person that I like or somebody that I subscribe to or follow doesn't like a thing, I don't have to like it either. Okay. And it could go the other way too. Like, for a long time, my mother-in-law was a huge fan of Bill Maher. and I was off of Bill Maher. I've been off of Bill Maher for a long, long time. Um, but just because I don't like Bill Maher, it doesn't mean I expect her not to like Bill Maher, right? So there are layers and levels to this game, right? Um, and I think we all need to just kind of take a chill pill, relax, and enjoy what we enjoy without without qualifying it as much. Um, that's all. So we've talked about all the stuff I kind of want to talk about today. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and before I start rambling and going into a bunch of other off-topic things, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here and get back to you. What I'm doing is I am building out the Substack so that a lot of these show topics will be available on Substack for you to read. I got to go back and summarize them. Um, so that it's not just all the rambling and stuff. I want to get to the main points and stuff, and so there's going to be some writing required of me. Um, but um, I do want to have another channel, another outlet for this where I have some written stuff for this stuff. Okay, and so yeah, that's what I got, y'all. Like I said, I'm gonna get out of here before I start rambling. I have some other points on my outline, but I think I'm gonna slide out today. Um, I do appreciate y'all tuning in. Next week we'll be back on the nerd stuff. I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.